Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for today's news conference, Governor Ige's budget presentation. Joining Governor today are Keith Hayashi, School Superintendent for the Department of Education, and Dr. David Lasner, President, University of Hawaii. As always, we will be taking questions. Our speakers will be taking questions from the media joining us virtually, and we will start first with the governor's presentation.
Aloha. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. The state budget is the single most important document developed each year that speaks to our priorities as a state. This supplemental budget request presents an action plan that addresses the issues of today and continues to make strategic investments to improve the state's social and physical infrastructure. It is a reasonable approach to allocating our state's resources. This budget request is very different from our budgets of the last 2 years, in which we had to cut over $1 billion and all agencies had to slash spending. This year, the economy has improved more quickly than anticipated. The current general fund tax revenue growth through the first 5 months of FY22 has been an astounding 27.3%. This is due to a variety of factors, including increased consumer spending, our Safe Travels program, and the rapid recovery of the visitor arrivals, and healthy general excise and income tax collections. The increased revenues allow us to launch initiatives that are responsive to the pandemic, as well as restore critical services that were reduced over the past 2 years. However, we know that changes in revenue growth can be unpredictable, especially during a pandemic. Therefore, while we are cautiously optimistic, we must continue to prepare for unforeseen events and invest in a sustainable future for all of Hawaii. A few of the operating budget highlights. The operating budget from all methods of financing is $16.07 billion for FY22, which is less than 0.1% less than last year's appropriation, and $16.926 billion for FY23. This represents an increase of 10.2%. More than last year's budget. There are no proposed general fund adjustments to the operating budget, but we do anticipate submitting a few emergency appropriation requests to make adjustments to the current year spending. The current year of fiscal year 22 general fund appropriation is $7.664 billion. And for FY23, the recommended general fund amount is $8.7 billion. This represents a 12.2% increase, or an increase of $942.3 million over the current appropriation level. State investments in critical infrastructure projects statewide offer the best and most direct way to drive our economy and create jobs for our people. This supplemental budget request includes funding for education, transportation, clean energy, internet access, and many other critical needs of our communities. The proposed capital improvements program for general obligation bond funds includes a slight decrease in FY22 to $984 million for FY22. And in FY23, we are proposing an increase of $827.4 million. This is a more than 281% increase over the current GO bond authorization for FY23. The increase is high because of the fiscal biennium appropriated CIP primarily to FY22 in the last legislative session. We are now requesting support for FY23 to continue the state's progress in addressing the CIP needs of the state. I have always been passionate about public education here in the state of Hawaii, and both the Department of Education and the University of Hawaii suffered significant budget reductions at the beginning of the pandemic. It was definitely painful restrictions and cuts that we have implemented over the last 2 years in order to balance our budget. Last year, we were planning for furloughs or layoffs in order to balance. Today, we are restoring and investing more than $689 million for public education. This budget adds $100.2 million for various DOE programs to restore funding due to reductions made during the pandemic. We are also adding $32.5 million for compensation for for teacher differentials in shortage categories for classroom teachers. We are also adding $4.33 million for virtual and distance learning. One of the lessons in this pandemic highlighted the need for investments in virtual and distance learning. This allows us to design a program for stability. We see the value that distance learning can bring to our state. We also know that the best learning occurs in the classroom between teacher and student. And we are committed to returning all of our students to in-person learning. Improvements to our educational facilities are some of the most important long-term investments that we can make. This year, we're requesting $240 million in additional funds for FY23 for public school facilities. Everything from deferred maintenance to health and safety projects, as well as other federal compliance. This will give a much needed boost to the current appropriation, which is just $26 million in FY23. At the university level, we're requesting $86.5 million for modernization, maintenance, capital renewal, deferred maintenance, and technology renovations across the state. This will increase UH's FY23 appropriation to $189.1 million. The pandemic underscored the need for more nurses, doctors, and healthcare professionals, especially on the neighbor islands. To address the doctor shortage, we have requested 20 permanent positions and $2.04 million to expand the John A. Burns School of Medicine's residency program to the neighbor islands. To address the state's nursing shortage, which became very apparent during the pandemic, we're requesting $1.75 million to support the University of Hawaii's nursing programs. During the pandemic, the team at Human Services provided help to hundreds of thousands of people who never thought they would need assistance, but needed it during this pandemic. MedQuest provided healthcare coverage to more than 100,000 additional residents during the pandemic. And Medicaid now provides coverage for nearly 30% of the state's population. This budget increases Medicaid healthcare payments by $15.9 million in general funds and $10.2 million in federal funds to provide additional home and community-based services, extended postpartum benefits, and expanded adult dental health benefits. During this pandemic, it became more evident than ever our reliance on information technology. Virtually every business and organization in the state had to transform everything that they did to adapt to the restrictions and limitations of COVID-19. And the pandemic emphasized the need to develop an innovation economy to change Hawaii's economic drivers. In this budget, we are proposing a broadband initiative, which will form the foundation for this new economy. This year, we are proposing to make the largest investment in broadband in the state's history. We're requesting $33.3 million of ARP funds for Hawaii state's match so that we can receive additional federal funds through the Broadband Equity Access and Development Federal Grant Program. In addition, we're lapsing ARP-funded CIP projects that were appropriated last year, but do not meet the federal guidelines that were issued after the appropriations were made. We are reappropriating $115.3 million in ARP CIP funds for statewide broadband projects, pending U.S. Department of Treasury approval of our grant plan. This is the most significant investment in broadband services in the state's history. We have seen the cost of housing skyrocket during the pandemic. It has been one of our highest priorities of this administration and continues to be so. We've achieved our initial goal of building 10,000 new homes by 2020. And I believe we are positioned to complete 3,000 more units before the end of 2022. And most of these units will be affordable. Nevertheless, the demand for housing, including rentals, has reached critical proportions. This budget is requesting $40 million cash infusion to the School Facilities Agency for much needed teacher housing in West Oahu, and requesting an additional $40 million in special funds authorization for this project. We're also requesting $5 million for a statewide loan capitalization program for the Department of Hawaiian Homelands. We're asking for $10 million in additional funds for Hawaiian Homeland's lot development projects to increase access to housing for beneficiaries. The COVID-19 response has shown us that public safety is an important part of a healthier and safer Hawaii. We all know that the pandemic is still with us, and this budget requests funds to continue to prioritize public health. We're adding $61.8 million for Safe Travels program and National Guard costs and other COVID-19 expenditures so we can continue our fight against COVID-19. We're also adding over $30 million in state and federal funds to provide contingency funding for statewide COVID-19 operations. And we're restoring $5 million to the Major Disaster Fund. COVID-19 outbreaks in our jails and prisons alarmed all of us. Every state in the nation has been reporting prison staffing shortages for many years, and the COVID-19 pandemic exacerbated the situation. Therefore, the budget restores $17.6 million to fund 291.5 permanent positions in the Department of Public Safety. This will bring the department up to FY 2019 staffing levels. It adds 193 new positions, including 29 healthcare positions, to staff new wings currently underway that will address the chronic overcrowding problems on Hawaii and Maui County, as well as at the Women's Community Correctional Center. This budget also adds 24 permanent positions to support law enforcement services on Oahu and Hawaii. In addition, we're adding 22 permanent healthcare positions to improve healthcare services in various correctional facilities statewide. The need for around-the-clock nursing services and increased counseling was brought to light during the pandemic. We're also making a number of much-needed improvements to our public safety facilities. $5 million in upgrades to the state's Emergency Operations Center and $21 million to replace the existing inmate management system for public safety facilities statewide. And finally, $15 million to take next steps in relocating the Oahu Community Correctional Center to Halawa. The pandemic reinforced the relationships between our people, place, and culture. From the beginning of my administration, we've made it a priority to create a cleaner, safer, and healthier Hawaii. We're focused on protecting our watersheds, better managing our oceans, creating a biosecurity plan, doubling local food production, and moving forward with 100% clean renewable energy for electricity. This budget adds funds to support these projects. We are adding $10 million for the Royal Kunia Agricultural Park to expand production of local food, $4 million for watershed protection, and $3.45 million for Manawili and Kaneohe poly acquisitions on Oahu. We are also seeking to strengthen the infrastructure that supports our communities. Using a mix of funding sources, the state will make needed improvements to airports, highways, and harbors across the state, especially with the passage of the building infrastructure at the national level. In addition to the requests we're making in this budget, we will be submitting a separate spending bill to the legislature to replenish the Emergency and Budget Reserve Fund. We do know that this emergency fund helped us through this pandemic, and without it, we would have resorted to significantly more layoffs or furloughs. We have seen during this pandemic, we must be prepared to weather the worst. We had built up the emergency fund prior to the pandemic, and we put the funds to good use in responding to it. We will be proposing to deposit $1 billion into the Emergency Budget and Reserve Fund for FY23. This is what we believe provides a strong response to economic upheaval in the future. We know without the support of federal dollars and other emergency activities, it would have been very difficult for the state to be able to survive this pandemic and emerge in the financial condition that we see ourselves. Now, our primary concern has been and will always be the health and welfare of Hawaii's people. Over the past 7 years, we've worked to put the state on solid financial footing and set Hawaii on a better trajectory. This budget continues to invest in Hawaii's future. It allows us to continue on a path where Hawaii's children have all the opportunities they deserve. It continues to make that investment in the education of our children, and it will work to allow them to choose if they want to, and if they can find the career opportunities, they can choose to call Hawaii home. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Governor. Our next speaker is Keith Hayashi, School Superintendent, Department of Education.
Aloha, Keith Hayashi, Interim Superintendent. On behalf of our students and our entire public school system, I want to thank Governor Ige for including over $270 million in general funds in his budget proposal for the Department of Education in the coming fiscal year. This funding will go a long way towards helping to stabilize public education following some very challenging economic times for our state. We know the pandemic has impacted student learning and has deepened the divides in educational opportunities. This investment in education will provide our schools with predictable and reliable funding so that we can focus on the needs of our students and provide the supports they need. By stabilizing our base budget, the department will be able to focus on our use of federal relief funds that are designated to address impacts from COVID. The Board of Education last week approved our educational and fiscal plans for these federal relief dollars, and we are working diligently to get these funds into the hands of our school leaders to directly benefit our students. We know that this is the beginning phase of the budget process, and we look forward to working collaboratively with the Governor, Board of Education, and our legislators to come up with a sound financial plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And our final speaker, Dr. David Lasner, University of Hawaii President.
Thank you, Governor, for your support of public higher education in the state of Hawaii. We're extraordinarily pleased at the University of Hawaii with your supplemental budget. I'll just mention three items. First is your support for the supplemental budget request approved by the Board of Regents earlier this fall, including restoration of the cuts and a substantial support for our repairs, improvement, and modernization program of our facilities that are so vital to modern teaching, learning, and scholarship. Second, I want to highlight the investments that you are supporting in the area of workforce development, and in particular, two of Hawaii's greatest needs. First, in healthcare, there's support for increased nursing faculty to increase our education of nurses to serve communities across the islands. And second is a new innovative program to help develop more residencies for doctors on the neighbor islands as well. What we know is that where medical students practice in their residencies after their medical education is the best predictor of where they will serve as professionals in the healthcare community. And so by expanding these opportunities on the neighbor islands, we believe we will have the opportunity to increase doctors and address some of that shortage that has plagued us for so long. The second area of workforce development I want to mention is an initiative to increase our education of teachers for the public schools in the state. We know that shortage is devastating, and the entire University of Hawaii is committed to step up and do our part to try and educate more local teachers to serve in the communities where they live. The third and last area I want to mention is the investment in economic development and diversification. And there are three areas I'll mention that are of particular note. First is the area of creative media. There was a request from the Board of Regents for a small number of positions at UH West Oahu. That's one of the fastest growing programs at UH West Oahu. And we also need personnel to support the beautiful new creative media building that has just been completed on that campus. There's also funding for equipment at UH Manoa for the creative media program, in particular in the areas of some of the digital media, a new computer lab, and that's also one of the fastest growing programs. And these are areas for great, really unlimited economic opportunity within the state of Hawaii as part of the traded economy, where we bring in money from other places to help support our work and our high quality jobs. The second area I want to mention is in the area of information technology, computer science, and cybersecurity. Coincidentally, we were just downstairs at a workshop with some legislators, private sector, and others on our IT workforce shortages. And not only will we have support to increase our output of students, but there's also a very innovative program called Leap Start, which would create more work-based learning opportunities, earn while you learn, for some of our college students to get real-world experience to prepare them for greater success in the workforce. And lastly, I want to mention the infrastructure support with CIP funding at UH West Oahu. We think this can unlock some of the potential for development and accelerate opportunities, in particular around a potential private sector fully funded film studio. If we can get some of the infrastructure in place for that project, it will be a great match with our creative media building there and allow a significant increase in media, TV, and other kinds of production opportunities in Hawaii, as well as opportunities for housing that are so important to this entire state. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lassner, and we'll open it up to questions from the media. They're joining us virtually. I'll call on you reporters, but if you have a follow-up, please be sure to raise your virtual hand before asking your follow-up question. We'll go first to Dan Nicasso, Star Advertiser. Go ahead, Dan.
Thank you, Jody. My question's for Governor Ige. Your budget messaging talked about the economy, which continues to improve, and in fact, continues to outperform forecasts. Not so optimistic about federal funding or additional federal funding. What have you heard specifically from the White House during your meetings about what that expectation could be, and why is it not so bullish?
Well, I do know the last discussion we had with the White House was last week, and they were still optimistic that the Build Back Better investment in the social infrastructure would be moving forward. So we have not had any discussions since the events of this weekend. We are committed, and the discussions we've had is that there continues to be significant discussion amongst U.S. senators and the Congress in general about these key programs that makes generational investments in childcare, in social programs that are so important to our community. So I have expressed, and I do know that all of the Hawaii congressional delegation supports the Build Back Better program. It's in fact making investments that we've made at the state level for many years. And certainly we feel very well positioned to be able to compete for competitive grants in these programs should the Congress pass the measure in the next few weeks.
Thank you very much, Governor. Moving on to Kevin Dayton, Civil Beat. Kevin.
Hi, Governor. This one's also for you, please. I'm wondering, my recollection is that the public worker unions had reopeners. I believe that you would be going into negotiations about now. And I know a number of them took zero in the last round of negotiations. And I wonder whether your administration is looking at helping them to boost their revenue in the way you have some of the state departments, or could you speak to that, how the negotiations are going?
Certainly, Kevin, as you are very much aware, we did have reopeners in a number of the contracts. We still have a couple of public employee contracts that are in arbitration as well. So we are looking forward to negotiating with the unions. We do appreciate the sacrifices that our public servants have made during the past 2 years. I also would like to acknowledge that we appreciate all of their commitment to continue to serving the public during these trying times. And so I look forward to the negotiations with the units. We do anticipate and hope that we will be able to get to a fair conclusion of the negotiations, and certainly would be submitting those costs to the legislature for consideration.
And did you have a follow-up there, Kevin? Kevin, go ahead.
No, yeah, sorry, I was muted. Sorry, Governor. Yeah, I'd be interested. I mean, can you put a number on what you think is fair? Is there anything to say about that?
No, I would not want to wager that. I can tell you that we are engaged with negotiations with the public employee unions that have reopeners.
All right, Paul Drews, KITV, going to you.
This is actually a question for Keith. The governor talked about the money to restore programs for the DOE. Can you tell us what some of those programs would be, that $100 million, and also the additional 78 million or so for renovations, improvements, maintenance? Would that help take care of the backlog, or would we still have a backlog when it comes to our schools? Maintenance, that is.
Yes, definitely. The funds that the governor has appropriated for the department will go a long way to helping to support our students and their learning. Our complex area superintendents and principals have all created plans to address, to be able to leverage those funding, to be able to address our student needs. And so those funds will be distributed, our federal funding will be distributed to our schools to be able to implement those plans. And as far as facilities, most definitely the funding that it has been allocated will definitely go a long way to support our students in providing them with the repairs and the facilities that they so deserve.
Just a follow up. Sorry, Keith, before you go, I was just asking for a little bit more in specifics. Do you have any idea on the amount of backlog we have as far as millions needed for maintenance and repairs for the particular schools? Where do we stand right now? And then just, I know over that 100 million, there were programs that were cut. So we're just wondering which programs or were reduced, which programs will see some of that money back again.
The 100.2 million will support those cuts that were imposed last year. And so that will release our federal funding. And again, those funds will be allocated to the complex areas and schools to be able to address those specific needs for the unique communities that our schools have. And those plans have been created by our school principals in collaboration with their school staff and their area superintendents. I don't have the specific dollar amounts though related to facilities, but I can get that for you.
Thank you, Superintendent.
Thank you.
Kevin Dayton, Sylvie, go ahead.
This one's for Governor again. I'm just interested in the idea of depositing $1 billion into the rainy day fund. I don't think anything the state's ever contributed to that before has even come close. You would be sitting on what, maybe 1.3 billion if that were to pass, and can you kind of explain the justification for that?
Yeah, certainly, Kevin, as you are fully aware, and I think I did talk with you during the pandemic about the working capital loan that the state pursued. As you know, we had never borrowed for working capital to make payroll until this pandemic happened. And we saw a rapid disappearance of the revenue stream that supports many of our public servants. So when we look at what policies make the most sense to assure that as quickly as possible, the state would be in a good financial position to support further upheaval caused by this pandemic that continues on as we speak. We believe that $1 billion in the emergency budget rainy day fund would allow us the flexibility. As we had talked previously, we were looking at significant layoffs in the thousands of public servants or furloughs of up to 2 days a week for all public employees because of the $1.4 billion shortfall that occurred early in the pandemic. So if you think about the $750 million working capital loan, with that, we were able to defer furloughs or layoffs And we were fortunate that the ARP Act did appropriate $1.6 billion to the state to allow us to permanently end discussions about layoffs or furloughs. And so, Kevin, if you look at the 750 million working capital and the $1.6 billion that we received from the federal government, we believe that depositing $1 billion into the emergency budget and reserve fund would well position the state for an economic downturn like we've seen during this pandemic.
Go ahead, Kevin, has an update.
Just a quick follow-up then, Governor. I mean, is the pitch that you make to the public worker unions as you head into negotiations, hey, you want to avoid layoffs if something like this ever happens again, and so you should accept that $1 billion deposit into the rainy day fund in lieu of raises? I mean, is it take one or the other?
Well, I mean, it's not. It's definitely not take one or the other, and we will negotiate in good faith those contracts that have reopeners, and it's not going to be one or the other scenario. Kevin, we were fortunate because of this pandemic that the Treasury created and had this liquidity program that guaranteed we could get access to working capital. We were able to get better terms in the private markets that allowed us to extend the repayment period. As you may recall, we initially wanted to use federal relief dollars to pay off the working capital loan, but that was not allowed. So this investment in the emergency budget reserve fund really does prepare us should COVID response and should we have another surge, should there be another economic shock to Hawaii's economy, that would allow us to respond without additional federal assistance in a way that would minimize layoffs and furloughs.
Thank you, Governor. Dan Picasso, Star Advertiser. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jody. Questions for Governor. I believe it was Dr. Lassner that made a reference to a meeting you had with legislative leaders regarding the budget proposal. Did you hear any particular concerns, eyebrows raised over anything in particular?
No, I mean, I do think, one of the things that we saw during this pandemic was just about those areas in the university that are not generating graduates in the same numbers that we need in the workforce. As we talked about, for sure, healthcare is an area that we have a need for more graduates in nursing and medicine. Teachers, we have had a teacher shortage now for a decade. And the university has committed and stepped forward to producing more teachers. And we talked about the pivot of our economy and the focus by university to really generate graduates in the careers of the future. So information technology, cybersecurity, digital media, we've seen an explosion of new avenues for distribution of digital media products. And we've seen an increase in spite of the pandemic. We now actually have 3 series, regular series that are being filmed in the islands. We definitely know that Hawaii is a desirable, safe, and healthy location for digital media productions. And we would like to see the university be able to generate more graduates with the skills necessary to succeed and compete in these areas. And really, we're committed to creating career opportunities for our residents.
All right, thank you, Governor. Kevin, go ahead. Maybe unmute. Kevin Dayton, I saw your hand.
Oh, I'm sorry. I couldn't hear you, Jody. I thought you called on somebody else. My apologies. Hey, Governor, I understand that if I heard it right, that you've got about $15 million for the new OCCC for planning money as part of this package. And I think that would bring the total up to about $25 million in planning. And last I heard, the administration was pursuing a P3 project of some kind to raise the money for the project. Are you committed to that approach? And are you going to draw the line on planning money anywhere, or how long? Maybe you could speak to that.
Yeah, Kevin, I am committed to a public-private partnership for the jail and correctional facilities. We have seen, I think, one fundamental difference between the situation for a jail or prison, as it's different than Aloha Stadium, is those projects in the partnership models have been developed, and there are working models that we can look at all across the country. So we are seeking additional funds so we can develop the RFP that's necessary. We know that there is some question about the functions and the size of the facility. We're committed to the transformation and focus on residential treatment facilities for both substance and drug abuse, as well as rehabilitation programs. So community-focused rehabilitation programs that would help those who are incarcerated transition and be able to develop careers that pay living wages that would allow them to be successful in returning to our communities. And that's what we're committed to moving forward with.
Thank you very much, Governor. Any more questions on the budget? Okay, seeing no hands, we have about 7 minutes before we have to wrap up. So if you have any off-topic questions, we're open to that. Nikki Shenfield, KHON, go ahead.
Hey, Governor, with the recent case counts, are there any plans or discussions about any mass testing locations or mass booster sites?
We are committed to expanding vaccination sites and testing sites. But in general, we really believe that we can be most successful by having the testing and vaccination facilities out in the community. We now currently have more than 140 locations where testing and vaccination is occurring. When we've checked with the providers, there is no single site that is overwhelmed by the numbers who are seeking vaccinations or who's seeking testing, at least at this point in time. So, we do believe that the distributed availability of tests and vaccinations is the best in the sense that it makes it most convenient for the general public. I certainly would encourage everyone who is fully vaccinated but hasn't gotten their booster yet to get their booster. It's very clear the science says the booster significantly increases your ability to fight off the virus and not get sick. And I think most importantly, should you get infected, it certainly allows you to fight off the virus and avoid severe illness or hospitalization.
Thank you, Governor. Going on to Paul Drews, KITV. Paul?
Governor, sticking on the COVID theme, I know you've left it up to the mayors of the counties to determine restrictions, but with the surge in cases, how concerned are you about large scale events and those outbreaks that we're seeing once again?
We did discuss, I did personally discuss with the mayors this morning. As you know, we did issue a press notice yesterday concerning the Republic. And once again, the concern is the fact that we do have large gatherings. They were all vaccinated or had a negative COVID test within 48 hours of the event. So it should be a crowd that should not have been infected. But we've always believed that as you increase the crowd sizes, you increase the probability that someone is infected. And then the fact that many are not wearing masks and they're in very, very close proximity. I can't imagine 1,000 people at the Republic, but certainly it would mean that social distancing was not happening inside the event. And we currently have more than 30 positive COVID cases. Some of those are fully vaccinated individuals. Some of those are individuals who tested negative 48 hours prior. And so, yes, having events with people in close proximity, even though they are vaccinated or tested, does increase the possibility of getting infected with the virus. And it has significantly increased the COVID cases that we're seeing.
Thank you, Governor. We have time for one more question. We're going to Kevin. Go ahead, Kevin.
Hey, Governor, this is a budget question again, please. Just a quick check. The money that you're talking about for this unusual budget and the extra funding that you have, you're not assuming any tax increases. Is that correct?
That's correct. No tax increases. But Kevin, as you may be aware, I did veto a number of measures that was overridden. For example, we had continued to support the transit accommodations tax being distributed to the counties, and that was ended. And there were a number of other special fund allocations and fees and assessments that were going into dedicated funds for specific purposes that was returned to the general fund. So, our current balance is a reflection of decisions that the legislature made from the policy perspective. And, the fact that the economic recovery is happening quicker than most had projected. I do believe that the Safe Travels program, which now has brought more than 9.5 million travelers to the state of Hawaii in a safe way, certainly contributed to that. I do believe that pent-up demand for travel in general and the fact that we were able to keep Hawaii as a safe destination made it a desirable destination from North American travelers. And again, we are hopeful that we can restore international travel because we do know that that's a real important part of our visitor industry and will help us boost revenues even more.
Governor, I believe Kevin has a quick
Okay.
follow-up. Go ahead, Kevin.
If I can have one last, thanks. Governor, if I read it right, you've got, I think it's $60 million for HTA. Are you hoping to undo the cuts that the legislature imposed earlier this year? Can you speak to why that's justified?
Certainly there's a couple of things, Kevin. The Hawaii Tourism Authority, I think, has successfully transitioned from promoting travel to the islands to destination management. And they now have engaged the community, stakeholders, and the general public in those friction points all across the state in every county. And they are working to identify priorities and really looking to invest in projects that will benefit the visitor as well as the resident. So the 60 million request is a reduction from what they received in the past. As you know, Kevin, the TAT money that was appropriated to the agency was 84 million. So it is a reduction. It's more along the lines of what the legislature had appropriated in federal funds in the last session. So our intent is to continue the transition and transformation that HTA has embarked on. It gives us sufficient funds to implement the destination management action plans. It gives us the opportunity to demonstrate to our community that we're serious, that it's not only about bringing more travelers, it's about the quality of the travelers. And most importantly, we are targeting those that are respectful of our culture here that is interested to learn about Native Hawaiian culture as well as the overall setting of Hawaii. You know, it is about the people, place, and culture that makes Hawaii attractive as a destination, in addition to the environment and the healthy lifestyles and living that we have. All of those continue to make Hawaii the #1 destination on the planet. And we want to make certain that HTA is funded in a way that we can implement this transition in the best way for the public.
That's all we have time for.
So just wanted to thank everyone. Certainly this budget represents the priorities of the people of Hawaii. We do know how important education is to all of us. As a proud graduate of both Pearl City High School, a public high school, as well as the University of Hawaii, this investment is about investing in our future, providing the social safety net that is so important to all of us, making strategic investments in infrastructure and in projects that enhance career opportunities for our young people and allows us to learn the lessons of the pandemic and make strategic investments to improve the lives of all in our community. So thank you very much for listening in. We truly appreciate the discussion and conversation that will occur before the legislature in the next session. Aloha.